Welcome to Hearths of Myths. Today, the mist rolls down from the sacred mountains, and the boundary between the seen and the unseen begins to fade. We are walking the 1,000-year path of the golden-eyed spirit, the Kitsune. The air of the ancient world does not move as the air of the modern day. In the beginning, there was only the mist, a vast, swirling, gray sea of potential that hung between the high heavens and the silent, unformed earth. Imagine yourself standing at the very edge of time, where the mountains are not yet stone, but merely shadows within the fog, and the rivers are but a whisper in the dark. This is the cradle of Japan, the land of the 8 great islands, born from the divine stirrings of the gods. To understand the Kitsune, the fox spirit that haunts the dreams and the history of this archipelago, one must first understand the silence that preceded them. One must understand the kami, those infinite, invisible forces that reside in every blade of grass, every mountain peak, and every falling drop of rain. In the earliest chronicles of the nation, the Kojiki and the Nihon Shoki, the world was brought into being by the divine couple, Izanagi and Izanami. As they stood upon the floating bridge of heaven, stirring the brine with a jeweled spear, the droplets that fell back into the ocean hardened into islands. This was a world of raw, unbridled spirit. There was no clear line between the physical and the metaphysical. A tree was not just wood and leaf. It was a living consciousness. A rock was not just cold mineral. It was a silent witness to the ages. Within this sacred geography, the fox began its journey, not as a predator of the forest, but as a bridge between the seen and the unseen. The word itself, Kitsune, carries the weight of 1,000 years of whispered stories. Its origins are hidden in the soft sounds of the old Japanese tongue. Some scholars of the past suggested that it comes from the sound of the fox's bark, a sharp, echoing kitsu that cuts through the stillness of the woods. The suffix ne was added as an expression of affection, or perhaps a sign of spiritual status. But there is a more haunting narrative theory that has survived through the oral traditions. It is said to come from the phrase kitsune, meaning come and sleep, or kitsune, meaning always comes. This etymology is rooted in the legend of a man who married a beautiful woman, only to discover she was a fox in human form. Even after she was forced to flee back into the wild, her husband would call out to her every evening, begging her to return to their home and sleep beside him. He would cry, "Kitsune," and she would come to him in the twilight, a ghost of a love that refused to die. This tells us that from the very beginning, the Kitsune was defined by its proximity to humanity, its desire to cross the threshold of the domestic and the wild. In the context of the early Shinto faith, the fox was recognized for its intelligence and its keen senses. The people who tilled the soil, the rice farmers of the ancient provinces, observed the fox with a mixture of reverence and caution. They saw the way the fox moved like a golden flame through the tall grass of the harvest. They noticed that the fox appeared most frequently when the rice was ripening, acting as a natural guardian against the rodents that would destroy the grain. This biological reality soon transformed into a spiritual certainty. The fox was not just an animal, it was a sign. It was a messenger of the kami. We must speak of the distinction that defines the spiritual hierarchy of these beings. Not all kitsune are created equal. The ancient texts and the local folklore divide them into two primary categories that dictate their behavior and their relationship with the mortal world. On one side, we have the Zenko, the good foxes. These are the celestial beings, the hallowed servants of the deity Inari. They are often depicted as white as the fallen snow on Mount Fuji, representing purity and divine order. They do not seek to harm. They seek to bless. They are the guardians of the shrines, the watchers of the home, and the bringers of prosperity. To see a Zenko is to be touched by the breath of the gods. On the dark, shifting side of the spectrum are the Yako, the field foxes. These are the wild ones, the tricksters who owe no allegiance to the high heavens. They are creatures of whim and appetite. While they possess the same magical potential as their celestial cousins, they use it for their own amusement or survival. They are the ones who lead travelers astray with illusory lights, who steal the food from a peasant's table, and who weave complex pranks that can last for generations. The Yako represent the untamed nature of the universe, the chaos that exists outside the village gate. They are a reminder that the world is not always kind, and that the spirits are not always our friends. As a fox lives, it grows in power and wisdom. This is the most fascinating aspect of their mythology. A kitsune is not born with its full power. It must earn it through the passage of time and the accumulation of experience. For every 100 years that a fox survives, it gains a new tale. Imagine the majesty of a creature that has seen the rise and fall of dynasties, its fur thick with the dust of centuries, and its tails fanning out behind it like a peacock's train. With each new tale, the kitsune's understanding of the cosmos deepens. Its ability to shift its shape, to control the elements, and to see into the hearts of men becomes more refined. At the beginning of its life, a fox is merely a fox, perhaps a little more clever than its brothers. But as the decades turn, its eyes begin to glow with an inner light. It begins to understand the language of the birds and the songs of the wind. It learns the art of kitsunebi, the foxfire. This is a cold, ethereal light that appears in the marshes and forests at night, a flickering blue or green flame that dances just out of reach. Some say it is the breath of the fox, while others believe it is produced by the fox striking its tail against the ground. This light is the first sign that the animal has transcended its mortal shell and become a reiko, a spirit fox. The relationship between the kitsune and the land of Japan is symbiotic. The islands themselves are said to be alive with the energy of the earth, and the foxes are the conductors of that energy. In the northern regions, where the winters are long and the snowdrifts cover the shrines, the foxes are seen as symbols of endurance. In the south, among the dense forests and the humid valleys, they are the masters of the shadows. They are woven into the geography of the nation. Every mountain has its own fox king. Every valley has its own resident trickster. We find the earliest written accounts of fox-related phenomena in the 8th century records. These were not just stories. They were treated as historical facts. The people believed that a fox could enter a human body, a condition known as kitsunetsuki, or fox possession. This was a terrifying prospect. To be possessed by a fox meant to lose one's mind, to act with the wild ferocity of an animal, and to speak in voices that were not your own. It was believed that a fox could enter through the fingernails or the breast, slipping into the soul like a shadow. This highlights the perceived power of the Kitsune, its ability to bridge the gap between different states of being. But we must return to the image of the fox in the tall grass. Picture the golden light of the late afternoon sun hitting the rice fields. The grain is heavy and yellow, ready for the sickle. In the distance, the forest begins to darken, the trees turning into silhouettes against a violet sky. You see a flash of movement. A tail, bushy and tipped with white, disappears into the undergrowth. You do not know if it was a common animal or a spirit that has lived since the days of the first emperors. This uncertainty is the heart of the Kitsune myth. They exist in the Ma, the space between things. They are the transition from day to night, from life to death, from the human to the divine. The Kitsune's birth is not just a biological event. It is a manifestation of the world's desire for mystery. In a world that was being mapped, settled, and governed, the fox remained the one variable that could not be controlled. They were the reminders that the ancient magic of Izanagi and Izanami had not completely faded. Even as cities grew and the old forests were cleared, the Kitsune simply moved into the gardens, the temples, and the dreams of the people. They adapted. They survived. To walk the path of the Kitsune is to walk a path of constant transformation. We will see how they become beautiful women to test the hearts of monks, how they become elderly scholars to share forgotten wisdom, and how they become terrifying monsters to punish the greedy. But here, in the beginning, we see them as they truly are. The children of the Japanese mist, the silent watchers of the sacred islands, and the first messengers of the gods. They are the golden thread that runs through the tapestry of the rising sun, a thread that is never broken, only woven deeper into the fabric of time. As we move forward into the next chapter of this journey, we will look toward the shrines. We will follow the fox into the presence of the great deity Inari. We will see the thousands of red gates that mark the boundaries of their kingdom, and understand why, even today, the people of Japan still leave offerings of tofu and rice for the silent statues that guard the gates. The storm of the thunder god has passed, and now the moon rises over the foxwood. Listen closely. The grass is rustling. The Kitsune is near. The ancient Japanese did not view the fox as a singular entity, but as a vast, complex family of spirits. Beyond the Zenko and the Yako, there are mentions of the Ninko, a fox spirit that is invisible to the human eye and can only be perceived by those with a heightened spiritual sense. There is the Kiko, the ghost fox, which has no physical form, but can influence the physical world through sheer force of will. These variations show that the Kitsune was a way for the ancient mind to categorize the many different types of energy they felt in the wild. The world was crowded with these invisible neighbors, and the fox was the face they most often gave to the unknown. In the mountains of Nagano and the hidden valleys of Shikoku, the stories of the Kitsune's origins often involve the stars. Some legends suggest that the first foxes fell from the sky as sparks of celestial fire, landing in the primeval forests and taking the shape of animals to hide their divine nature. This connection to the stars remains in the imagery of the Hoshi no Tama, the star ball or star pearl. If you look at the statues of foxes at the entrances of Japanese shrines, you will often see them holding a glowing sphere in their mouths or under their paws. This sphere is said to contain the fox's soul, its magical power, and its connection to the heavens. To steal a fox's jewel is to have power over the fox, but it is a dangerous game, for a kitsune will go to the ends of the earth to reclaim its heart. As the centuries progressed, the kitsune became a central figure in the setsuwa, or spoken tales. These were the stories told by travelers at inns, by grandmothers to their children, and by monks to their disciples. In these tales, the origin of the fox is often tied to the concept of en, or karmic connection. A person might save a fox from a trap, and in return, the fox's lineage would be bound to that person's family for generations. This created a social reality where certain families were known as kitsune mochi, or fox holders. They were believed to have foxes as servants who would bring them wealth and protect them from enemies. This was both a blessing and a curse, for such families were often feared and ostracized by their neighbors, who worried about the unpredictable nature of the fox's favor. The geography of Japan itself played a role in the shaping of the kitsune. The islands are volcanic, mountainous, and prone to sudden, dramatic shifts in weather. This environment fostered a belief in spirits that were equally volatile. The fox, with its ability to disappear in an instant, and its habit of barking at the moon, became the perfect avatar for this landscape. They were the spirits of the shifting mist and the hidden paths. They were the ones who knew the secret ways through the mountains that led to the hidden realms of the gods. To understand the birth of the kitsune is also to understand the birth of Japanese poetry and aesthetics. The image of the fox is inseparable from the concept of yugen, a word that describes a profound, mysterious grace that is not quite of this world. It is the beauty of a falling leaf, the shadow of a bird on the water, or the sight of a fox disappearing into the twilight. The kitsune is the embodiment of yugen. They are not grand or loud like the gods of thunder or war. They are subtle. They are the flicker of a tail, the glint of an eye, the soft padding of paws on dry leaves. They are the poetry of the forest. In the coming hours, we will delve deeper into the specific myths that have defined this creature for millennia. We will walk the long road to Fushimi, where the thousands of torii gates create a tunnel of red light that leads to the heart of the fox god's power. We will witness the transformation of the fox into the legendary Tamamo-no-Mae, whose beauty nearly brought an empire to its knees. We will explore the dark arts of the Kitsunetsuki and the protective charms that have been used for centuries to keep the wilder foxes at bay. But for now, let us stay here in the dawn of the world. Let us appreciate the fox as it was before the stories became complicated, before the shrines were built, and before the names were written down. It is a creature of pure spirit, born of the earth and the sky, walking the thin line between the two. It is a guardian, a trickster, and a friend. It is the kitsune, and its story is just beginning. The early Japanese people lived in close proximity to nature, far more than we can easily imagine today. Their lives were dictated by the seasons, the cycles of the moon, and the health of the soil. In this environment, every animal was a neighbor, and the fox was the most intriguing neighbor of all. Unlike the bear, which was feared for its strength, or the deer, which was admired for its grace, the fox was respected for its mind. It was an animal that seemed to think, to plan, and to feel. This perception of agency is what allowed the fox to transition from an animal into a kami. In the Shinto tradition, there is a concept called Yaoyorozu no Kami, which translates to 8 million gods. This is not a literal number, but a way of saying that the divine is infinite and omnipresent. The Kitsune is one of the most visible manifestations of this infinity. They are the proof that the sacred is not distant or unreachable. The sacred is right there, in the woods behind your house. The sacred has fur and sharp teeth and a playful spirit. The sacred is watching you from the shadows, waiting to see if you will be kind, if you will be wise, or if you will be foolish. The birth of the Kitsune myth is also tied to the arrival of Buddhism in Japan. When the new faith arrived from the continent, it did not replace the old Shinto beliefs. Instead, the two merged in a beautiful, complex synthesis. The fox found a place in the Buddhist pantheon as well, associated with the bodhisattva Dakinetan, who is often depicted riding a white fox through the heavens. This added a new layer of depth to the Kitsune. They were now not only messengers of the Shinto kami, but also vehicles of Buddhist wisdom and compassion. They became cosmic travelers, moving between different religious traditions as easily as they moved between the trees. As we conclude this first part of our exploration, let us reflect on the enduring power of this image. Why has the fox remained so central to the Japanese identity for over 15 centuries? Perhaps it is because the Kitsune represents the parts of ourselves that we cannot quite domesticate. They are our cleverness, our curiosity, our playfulness, and our capacity for both great kindness and great mischief. They are the wildness that remains in our hearts, even in the most ordered of societies. The mist is starting to lift now. The sun is rising over the mountains of Yamato. The first birds are beginning to sing, and the dew is glistening on the spider webs. The world of the ancient gods is waking up, and there, on the edge of the forest, a fox is watching. It has one tail now, but in its eyes you can see the promise of 9. It is waiting for us to follow. It is waiting for the story to unfold. We will now turn our attention to the second part of our saga, where we will explore the divine connection between the Kitsune and the god of rice, Inari. We will learn of the sacred compact between the farmer and the fox, and the rituals that have sustained the Japanese spirit for generations. The journey is long, but the path is beautiful. Let us walk it together with the calm and steady heart of the seeker. The secrets of the Kitsune are waiting to be revealed, one tale at a time. The morning sun now rests fully upon the vibrant red wood of the torii gates, casting long, rhythmic shadows across the stone path that winds upward into the heart of the mountain. We have followed the golden flash of the fox's tail away from the primal mists of creation and into a world of structured devotion, where the scent of cedar and the sound of mountain water define the atmosphere. This is the realm of Inari Okami, the great deity of rice, fertility, and worldly success. To walk this path is to understand how a wild animal of the forest became the most sacred messenger in the Japanese spiritual consciousness. The connection between the fox and the grain is not a mere coincidence of nature. It is a profound contract signed in the soil and sanctified by centuries of prayer. The history of this union begins in the early 8th century, specifically in the year 711, during the reign of Empress Genmai. Legend tells of a wealthy man named Hata no Irogu, a member of the powerful Hata clan, who lived in the Yamashiro province. One day, while practicing his archery, he used a rice ball, a mochi as a target. When his arrow struck the rice, the mochi was miraculously transformed into a white swan, which flew away and landed on the peak of a mountain known as Mitsumine. At the spot where the swan rested, rice began to grow in abundance, even in places where it should not have survived. This was seen as a sign of divine favor, a manifestation of the spirit of the land. The mountain was renamed Inari, a word derived from inenari, meaning the growing of rice. To honor this miracle, the Hata clan established a shrine upon the slopes, and thus the worship of Inari began. But why, in this landscape of miracles, did the fox emerge as the primary attendant to the god? The ancient farmers observed the natural world with a clarity born of necessity. They saw that when the rice was planted in the spring and began to sprout, the foxes would descend from the mountains. They watched as these clever creatures hunted the mice and rats that threatened to devour the precious seedlings. In the eyes of the farmer, the fox was a natural protector, a silent ally in the struggle for survival. When the harvest was gathered in the autumn, the foxes would disappear back into the high peaks. This seasonal cycle mirrored the movement of the Tano-kami, the god of the rice fields, who was believed to spend the winter in the mountains, as the Yama-no-kami, the god of the forest. The fox, moving between these two worlds, was the perfect vessel for the divine will. As we ascend the mountain of Fushimi Inari, we pass through thousands of vermilion gates, each one a gift from a person or a company seeking the blessing of the fox god. The color is not accidental. It represents the sun, life, and protection against evil forces. Within this tunnel of red light, we encounter the stone guardians. These are the Byakko, the white foxes. They sit in pairs at the entrance of every sub-shrine, their stone eyes watching the pilgrims with an expression of stoic wisdom. Unlike the wild foxes of the woods, these celestial beings are of a different order. They are the Kenzoku, the divine attendants. They do not eat the grain of the field. They sustain themselves on the essence of devotion. Look closely at the objects these stone foxes carry in their mouths or beneath their paws. Some hold a heavy iron key. This is the Kura no Kagi, the key to the rice granary. It symbolizes the ability of the Kitsune to unlock wealth and ensure that the community never goes hungry. Others hold a jeweled sphere, the Hoshinotama we spoke of before, representing the spiritual power and the soul of the deity. In some depictions, a fox might hold a scroll, signifying the secret wisdom and the laws of the universe that Inari has entrusted to them. These are not merely ornaments. They are the tools of their sacred office. They are the proof that the fox is the steward of the god's treasures. The hierarchy within Inari's kingdom is complex. At the highest level are the Myobu no Shin, the courtly foxes who have achieved a state of great holiness. These beings are said to reside in the inner sanctum of the heavens, invisible to all but the most enlightened priests. Below them are the countless messengers who patrol the physical world, listening to the whispered prayers of the people and carrying them up the mountain. To communicate with these messengers, the people developed a specific set of rituals and offerings. The most famous of these offerings is Abura Age, or deep-fried tofu. If you visit a Japanese market near a shrine, you will see small pouches of golden fried bean curd. The folklore suggests that foxes have a particular weakness for this food, especially when it is sweetened with sugar and soy sauce. There are stories of travelers who escape the tricks of a wild fox by throwing a piece of fried tofu into the bushes. distracting the creature long enough to find their way home. In the context of the shrine, however, the offering is more solemn. It is a gesture of hospitality, a way of inviting the messenger to linger and listen. When the tofu is stuffed with vinegared rice, it is called Inari Zushi, a direct tribute to the god and his servants. The relationship between the Inari fox and the people of Japan expanded as the nation moved from an agrarian society to a mercantile one. During the Edo period, which spanned from the early 17th to the mid-19th century, the city of Edo, modern-day Tokyo, became a center of trade and craftsmanship. The merchants, the blacksmiths, and the kabuki actors all sought the favor of Inari. They believed that the same spirit that could make rice grow in the mountains could make silver flow in the marketplace. The fox became a symbol of shobai hanjo, or business prosperity. Thousands of small Inari shrines were built in the narrow alleys behind shops and on the rooftops of houses. The fox was no longer just a figure of the fields. It had become a resident of the city. We must speak of the Kitsune bee in the context of the Inari tradition. While the wild foxes used their fire to lead people astray, the Inari foxes were said to use their light to guide the lost and to signal the coming of a prosperous year. On the night of the fox parade, the Kitsune no Yomeri, the flickers of light in the distance were seen as a celestial wedding procession. To see these lights was a sign of a great harvest. It was a moment where the veil between the worlds became thin, and the joy of the spirits spilled over into the world of men. There is a specific quietness that settles over an Inari shrine at dusk. The shadows of the trees stretch out to touch the stone foxes, and the red bibs tied around their necks flutter in the evening breeze. These bibs, often provided by the local community, are symbols of protection and health, often associated with the safety of children. In this light, the fox does not look like a trickster. It looks like a parent, a watcher, a silent guardian who has stood at this gate for 1,000 years. The fox knows every face that has passed through the torii gates, every secret prayer that has been whispered into the incense smoke. The transition of the fox from a forest animal to a divine messenger is one of the most successful cultural adaptations in history. It allowed the ancient Shinto roots of Japan to survive and flourish in an urbanizing world. The Kitsune provided a face for the abstract power of Inari. It is easier to pray to a clever, familiar animal than to an invisible force of fertility. The fox, with its expressive eyes and its playful nature, made the divine accessible. But even within the structured world of the shrine, the fox remains a creature of mystery. The priests of Fushimi Inari speak of the O-shirushi, the divine signs that the messengers leave behind. Sometimes it is a footprint in the sand that leads nowhere. Sometimes it is the sudden, inexplicable scent of fried tofu in a place where there is no kitchen. These are reminders that the foxes are not statues. They are living, breathing participants in the spiritual life of the nation. They are the breath of Inari, moving through the cedar forests and the rice paddies. As we continue our ascent, the path becomes steeper. We move past the ponds where the spirits of the ancestors are said to rest, and toward the higher altars where the air is thin and cold. Here, the stories of the Inari foxes become more esoteric. We hear of the Tenko, the celestial foxes who have lived for 1,000 years and have ascended to a state of pure light. These beings have no physical form. They are the gold of the sun and the white of the moon. They are the ultimate expression of the Kitsune's potential. they no longer need the offerings of men, for they have become one with the cosmic order. But for the common person, the red-furred messenger of the lower slopes is enough. They are the ones who understand the struggle of the small farmer and the anxiety of the shopkeeper. They are the ones who find the lost keys and protect the house from fire. They are the gods of the everyday, the spirits who walk the streets of Japan alongside the living. This enduring presence is why, even in the 21st century, the Inari shrines remain the most numerous in the country. From the massive complexes of Kyoto to the tiny altars found in the middle of a modern office district, the fox is always there. The sacred rice, the O-Inari-sama, is the foundation of this entire belief system. Rice is more than food in Japan. It is a sacred substance, a link to the gods. The fox, as the guardian of this grain, is the guardian of life itself. When a Japanese family sits down to a meal of rice, they are participating in a tradition that the fox has protected for over a millennium. Every grain is a testament to the vigilance of the white messenger on the mountain. As the sun begins to set behind the peaks of the Higashiyama Mountains, the torii gates glow with a deep, fiery intensity. We have explored the divine connection, the rituals, and the sacred history of the Inari messenger. We have seen how the fox became the steward of the rice and the bringer of wealth. But the Kitsune has another side, a side that is more human and more haunting. In the next part of our journey, we will step away from the shrines and into the world of shape-shifting and romance. We will see the fox as a woman, as a lover, and as a mother. We will explore the art of transformation and the emotional depths of a spirit that yearns for the warmth of a human home. The lanterns are being lit now along the path. The stone foxes are fading into the darkness, their outlines illuminated by the flickering flames. The mountain is quiet, but it is not empty. The messengers are moving through the shadows, preparing for their night watches. Listen to the wind in the pines. It sounds like a whisper, like a secret being shared between the god and his servants. The contract of the rice is secure. The guardian is on duty. The farmers of old believed that if you were truly favored by Inari, a fox would appear to you in a dream, leading you to a hidden treasure, or warning you of a coming storm. These dreams were considered as real as the waking world. The Kitsune was a bridge not just between the mountains and the fields, but between the subconscious and the reality of the harvest. This fluidity of identity is what makes the Kitsune so compelling. One moment a beast, the next a divine servant, the next a dream. In the medieval period, the cult of Inari merged with the Buddhist practices of the Hata clan and the esoteric teachings of the Shingon monks. This gave rise to the figure of Dakinetan, a Buddhist deity who is often depicted as a beautiful goddess riding a white fox. This version of the fox was associated with the power of life force and the attainment of worldly desires. It added a layer of fierce, almost terrifying power to the image of the Kitsune. It was a reminder that while the fox could be a gentle guardian, it was also a force of nature that could consume those who approached it without respect. The white fox of Inari is a symbol of the ideal. It is the fox as it should be, pure, loyal, and disciplined. But as we move into the darker woods and the older legends, we will encounter the foxes who do not follow the path of the shrine. We will meet the wild spirits who choose to live among men, wearing human skin and feeling human emotions. These are the stories of the Kitsune no Yomeri, the fox weddings, and the tragic love of Kuzunoha. As we walk back down the mountain, leaving the red gates behind, the smell of the forest returns. The air is cool and damp. We are leaving the structured world of the kami and entering the world of folklore and legend. The fox we saw this morning, with its one tail and its clever eyes, is still out there. Perhaps it is watching us from the trees, wondering if we have understood its secrets. The rice is growing in the fields below, and the harvest is coming. The cycle continues, and the kitsune remains at its center. In the coming hours, we will delve into the specific techniques of fox magic. We will learn how a fox can turn a leaf into a gold coin and a patch of grass into a palace. We will witness the emotional complexity of the shapeshifter and the high price they often pay for their curiosity about the human world. The journey through the fox myth is a journey through the human heart itself. Let us continue with the same calm and steady curiosity that has brought us this far. The night is young, and the fox has many more stories to tell. The red bibs of the stone foxes are the last things we see as the light fades. They are like small beacons of warmth in the gray stone of the mountainside. They are the signs of a love that humanity has for its most mysterious guardian. The fox is a messenger, yes, but it is also a friend. It is the spirit that bridges the gap between the divine and the mundane. It is the one who keeps us safe while we sleep, and who ensures that our tables are never empty. The sacred rice is safe. The storm is far away. The fox is at the gate. The vermilion glow of the shrine gates slowly fades into the deep velvet blue of a Japanese twilight. As we leave behind the ordered stone paths of Inari, the forest begins to breathe with a different kind of life. The air here is thick with the scent of damp earth and ancient pine needles, and the silence is no longer a sanctuary, but a stage. We are entering the realm of the yako, the wild foxes of the field, and the masters of the henge, the art of transformation. In this world, nothing is quite what it seems. That twisted branch might be a dormant spirit. That distant light might be a foxfire. And that beautiful woman walking alone along the riverbank might be a creature that, just moments ago, possessed 4 paws and a bushy tail. To understand the kitsune's ability to shift its shape, we must look beyond the simple act of changing one's skin. For a fox, transformation is a ritual of focus and will. While the celestial foxes of Inari are born with a degree of inherent holiness, the wild kitsune must learn the craft of the human image. Folklore tells us that this ability usually manifests when a fox reaches its 50th or 100th year. It is a milestone of maturity, a rite of passage that marks the transition from animal to something far more complex. But the transformation is not instantaneous. It requires a catalyst. Imagine a young fox, silver or red, standing in a clearing lit by a sliver of the moon. It finds a broad, flat leaf, perhaps from a lotus or a mulberry tree, and carefully places it upon its head. Or, in darker and older tales, the fox might find a human skull in a forgotten forest graveyard. It balances the bone or the leaf between its ears, sits back on its haunches, and begins to breathe in a rhythmic, trance-like pattern. It gazes upward at the Big Dipper, drawing the starlight into its marrow. In a flurry of white mist and the soft sound of rustling silk, the fox's body begins to stretch and soften. The fur retreats into smooth skin. The snout shortens into a delicate nose, and the sharp bark is replaced by a voice as melodious as a temple bell. This is the birth of the Kitsune Gao, the fox face. In Japanese aesthetics, this is a very specific type of beauty. A narrow face, eyes that slant upward with a piercing intelligence, thin eyebrows like the crescent moon, and high, elegant cheekbones. It is a beauty that is both captivating and unsettling, for it carries a hint of the wild within its refinement. When a kitsune takes human form, it does not merely mimic our appearance. It creates an ideal. It becomes the beautiful maiden seeking shelter from the rain, the elderly monk sharing tea by the roadside, or the wandering scholar with stories of 1,000 years ago. The first recorded contact between a shape-shifted fox and a human is found in the 8th century Nihon Ryoiki, a collection of miraculous stories. This legend is the cornerstone of the kitsune's romantic legacy. It tells of a man from the Mino province who spent his days tilling the earth and his evenings in solitude. One spring, while walking through the fields, he encountered a woman of such ethereal beauty that his heart stopped in his chest. She was alone, seemingly lost in the vastness of the countryside. They spoke, and her words were like a summer breeze. They fell in love, and she agreed to become his wife. They lived together in a small house near the forest, and for many years their life was a sanctuary of peace. She was a devoted wife, a skilled weaver, and a gentle mother to their son. But there was a shadow in their paradise. The man's dog, a fierce and loyal animal, never accepted the woman. Whenever she entered the room, the dog would growl and bare its teeth, its instincts sensing a truth that the man's eyes could not see. One day, while the woman was nursing her child, the dog lunged at her with a terrifying ferocity. In her panic and surprise, her concentration wavered. Her human form flickered, and for a fleeting second, a bushy, red tail appeared from beneath her kimono. The dog's barking intensified, and the woman, realizing her secret was lost, transformed fully back into a fox. She leaped onto the veranda, her eyes filled with a profound and human sorrow. Her husband, hearing the commotion, rushed to the door and saw the fox standing where his wife had been. But he did not reach for a weapon. He did not cry out in horror. He looked at the creature and felt only the weight of his love. "You may be a fox," he whispered, "but you are the mother of my child and the light of my life. I cannot forget you. Come back whenever you wish. Kitsune, come and sleep." And so, every night, the fox would return to the house in the form of the woman. She would sleep beside him in the darkness, and at dawn she would slip away back into the forest. This is the origin of the word kitsune, the ki meaning come, and the tsune meaning always. It is a story of a bond that transcends species, a reminder that the heart does not care about the skin it inhabits. It establishes the kitsune as a creature capable of deep, selfless loyalty, a theme that would be explored for over 1,000 years in Japanese literature. But as the moon climbs higher over the Shinoda forest, we must speak of a more tragic and powerful figure. Kuzunoha, the white fox of Izumi. Her story is one of sacrifice and the birth of a legend. Long ago, a young nobleman named Abe no Yasuna was walking through the forest when he encountered a hunter named Akuemon. The hunter had trapped a beautiful white fox and was preparing to kill it to use its liver for medicine. Yasuna, moved by the fox's pleading eyes, fought the hunter and released the animal, sustaining injuries in the process. A few days later, a beautiful woman named Kuzunoha appeared at Yasuna's door, claiming she wanted to help him recover from his wounds. She tended to him with a devotion that went beyond simple gratitude. They eventually married and had a son, a brilliant child named Dojimaru. Yasuna believed he was the luckiest man in the world, unaware that his wife was the very fox he had saved in the Shinoda woods. Years passed, and Dojimaru grew into a child of extraordinary intelligence. One autumn afternoon, while Kuzunoha was admiring the chrysanthemums in their garden, she became lost in thought. She forgot the iron-clad rule of the transformation, that the human form is a delicate vessel that must be maintained with constant focus. Her son, playing nearby, looked up and saw his mother's shadow on the paper sliding door. But the shadow was not that of a woman. It was the shadow of a fox with a long, elegant snout and pointed ears. Kuzunoha realized that her time in the human world had come to an end. The magic was broken. She could no longer stay without bringing misfortune upon her family. That night, as her husband and son slept, she took a brush and wrote a poem upon the silk screen of their bedroom. It is a poem that every child in Japan still knows today. If you love me, come and see me. In the forest of Shinoda, in Izumi Province, you will find the Kuzunoha. She disappeared into the mist, returning to her life as a spirit of the woods. But her legacy did not vanish. Her son, Dojimaru, would grow up to become Abe no Seimei, the most famous onmyoji, or court wizard in Japanese history. It was said that his magical prowess, his ability to speak with spirits and control the elements, was a gift from his fox mother. The blood of the Kitsune ran through his veins, making him a bridge between the mortal and the divine. Even today, the Shinoda no Mori Shrine stands in Osaka, dedicated to the mother who loved a human enough to leave him. These stories of love and marriage represent the Zenko side of the fox spirit, the aspect of the Kitsune that seeks harmony with humanity. But we would be remiss if we did not explore the darker, more mischievous side of the first contact. For every Kuzunoha, there are a dozen nameless tricksters who view humans as nothing more than playthings for their amusement. Imagine a proud samurai riding home after a long journey. He is arrogant, boasting of his bravery and his sharp blade. He sees a grand palace in the middle of a desolate plain where no palace should be. The gates are open, the lanterns are lit, and a beautiful maiden invites him in for a feast. He eats the finest delicacies, drinks the most expensive sake, and spends the night in a room of gold and silk. But when he wakes up the next morning, the palace is gone. He finds himself shivering in a muddy ditch. His fine delicacies are revealed to be horse manure and rotting leaves, and his silk robes are nothing but a tattered old straw mat. The Kitsune has tested his pride and found it wanting. The foxfire, or kitsunebi, is often the tool used for these illusions. These lights do not just illuminate, they bewitch. They can create an entire town where there is only a forest, or a bridge where there is only a rushing river. The Kitsune no Yomeri, or the fox's wedding, is the most elaborate of these spectacles. On nights when the rain falls while the sun is still shining, a phenomenon we call a sun shower, it is said that a fox is taking a bride. If you are lucky, or perhaps unlucky, you might see a procession of lanterns moving through the distant woods. It looks like a human wedding, with the palanquin and the attendants. But if you try to approach, the lights vanish, and you are left alone in the rain. Why do they do this? Why do they trick us? Some scholars suggest it is a form of spiritual discipline. The Kitsune mocks those who are too attached to their worldly status or their material possessions. They remind us that reality is fragile, and that what we perceive as solid and true is often just an illusion of the mind. In this sense, the fox is a Zen teacher of the wild, using laughter and confusion to strip away our ego. But there is a more visceral form of contact that we must address: kitsunetsuki, or fox possession. This is not a romantic marriage or a clever prank. It is a spiritual invasion. Throughout history, particularly in the Heian and Edo periods, people believed that a fox could enter a person's body to satisfy its hunger, or to seek revenge for a perceived slight. The symptoms were specific: a sudden craving for rice or beans, a tendency to talk to oneself in a yelping voice, and an aversion to the eyes of others. The fox was said to enter through the fingernails or the breasts, settling into the host's soul. Often, this was blamed on the Kitsune mochi families we mentioned earlier. If a person offended a member of a fox-holding family, a spirit would be sent to possess them as punishment. To cure this, a priest would have to be called to perform an exorcism, often involving the burning of pungent herbs or the recitation of sacred sutras. The kitsunetsuki highlights the underlying fear that the Japanese people had for the kitsune. As much as they loved the stories of the foxwife, they knew that a spirit is a power that cannot be fully tamed. The art of the shapeshifter is a reflection of the human desire for transformation. We look at the fox and see the possibility of being someone else, of escaping the constraints of our own lives. The kitsune is the ultimate iki, a word describing a stylish, sophisticated, and slightly dangerous elegance. They are the masters of the social mask. In a society as structured and ritualized as ancient Japan, the fox represented the freedom to change, to be fluid, and to be mysterious. As we linger here in the twilight of the third part of our journey, let us reflect on the poem left by Kuzunoha. It is a poem of longing, but also of recognition. She does not ask to be forgotten. She asks her husband to look for her in the forest, in the place where the wild and the human touch. This is where the kitsune lives. They do not belong entirely to the heavens, nor entirely to the earth. They are the inhabitants of the threshold. The stories of shapeshifting reveal a fundamental truth about Japanese mythology: that identity is not a fixed point, but a journey. A fox can become a woman can become a mother, and a mother can become a spirit once more. The boundaries are thin, and the heart is the only compass that matters. Whether it is the tragedy of Kuzunoha or the comedy of the tricked samurai, the fox remains our most intimate mirror. In the next part of our exploration, we will move toward the peak of the fox's power. We will speak of the tales. We will learn how a fox gains the strength of the ages and what happens when it reaches the legendary status of the nine-tailed spirit. We will encounter the most terrifying fox in history, Tamamo-no-Mae, the one who nearly destroyed the throne of Japan. The romance of the forest will give way to the politics of the palace and the cosmic power of the nine-tailed queen. The moon is now high and silver, casting sharp shadows across the forest floor. Somewhere in the darkness, a fox is watching. Perhaps it is practicing its next transformation, or perhaps it is simply waiting for the morning rain to hide its wedding. The story of the kitsune is a story of constant change, a river that never stays the same, but always flows toward the sea. Listen to the leaves rustling. Is it the wind, or is it the sound of a silk kimono brushing against the grass? The fox is never far away. The ancient texts say that when a fox transforms, it must always keep its hoshi no tama, its star pearl, close to it. If you ever encounter a beautiful stranger in the woods, look at their hands. If they are holding a small, glowing sphere, or if they seem overly protective of a small amulet around their neck, you might be standing in the presence of a kitsune. But be careful. If you steal the pearl, the fox will be your slave, but you will have earned the enmity of a spirit that never forgets. It is better, perhaps, to simply offer a piece of fried tofu and a bow of respect. The forest of Shinoda is quiet now. The white fox has long since disappeared into the camphor trees, but her story remains, a whisper in the ears of every lover who has ever lost their way. The art of the shapeshifter is the art of memory. It is the ability to hold on to a form, a feeling, or a promise, even when the world tries to pull it apart. The kitsune is the guardian of that art. As we prepare to enter the world of the nine-tailed fox, let us take one last breath of the pine-scented air. The legends of the forest are deep, but the legends of the court are sharper. We have seen the fox as a bride. Now we shall see her as a queen. The transformation is continuing. The tails are fanning out. The light of the foxfire is growing brighter. Let us follow it deeper into the night. The transition from the wild to the palace is a dangerous one, for the higher the fox climbs, the more it has to lose. But the kitsune has never been one to shy away from a challenge. They are the explorers of the human soul, the ones who want to see everything, feel everything, and be everything. The nine tails are not just a sign of power. They are a record of 1,000 years of living. Let us see what those years have taught the fox. Let us see the face of the nine-tailed one. The silver moon that witnessed the parting of Kuzunoha and the tears of the minnow farmer now begins to change. It swells in the sky, becoming a heavy golden orb that illuminates not just the forest floor, but the entire history of the East. As we move deeper into the night, the soft, romantic whispers of the threshold give way to a low, rhythmic chanting, the sound of 1,000 years passing in the blink of an eye. We are no longer looking at the one-tailed fox of the village outskirts. We are standing in the presence of the Kyubi no Kitsune, the nine-tailed fox, a creature of such immense spiritual weight that its very existence alters the flow of karma. In the natural world, we measure time by the seasons and the falling of leaves. In the spirit world of Japan, time is measured by the growth of a tail. For a kitsune, the first century of life is spent mastering the physical world, learning to hunt, to hide, and to take the first tentative steps into human form. But as the second century turns into the fifth, and the fifth into the 10th, the fox undergoes a terrifying and beautiful metamorphosis. For every 100 years of wisdom gained, a new tail sprouts from its lower back. Each tail is not merely more fur. It is a new reservoir of magical energy, a new eye opened in the soul of the cosmos. When a kitsune reaches the age of 1,000, the ultimate transformation occurs. Its fur, whether it was once the red of a summer sunset or the black of a stormy night, turns a brilliant, shimmering gold or a purity of white that rivals the light of the sun. Its eyes no longer reflect the world. they contain it. At this stage, the fox is no longer a yako or even a zenko. It becomes a tenko, a celestial fox, or a kugan, a void fox. It has reached the peak of the spiritual hierarchy. It can see across continents, hear the whispers of the dead, and perceive the threads of fate as clearly as a weaver sees the loom. But with this absolute power comes an absolute danger. The most famous story of the nine-tailed power is not one of protection, but of a beauty so sharp it cut through the heart of an empire. This is the saga of Tamamo-no-Mae, the Jewel Maiden. The story begins in the 12th century, during the Heian period, a time when the imperial court in Kyoto was a world of silk, poetry, and intricate shadows. Emperor Toba, a man of refined tastes and deep loneliness, encountered a girl of mysterious origins who appeared in the palace. She was called Tamamo-no-Mae. The chronicles of the Otogi Zoshi describe her as a woman of impossible perfection. It was said that she was not only the most beautiful woman in Japan, but also the most intelligent person to ever walk the earth. Imagine the scene in the Hall of State. The emperor is surrounded by the most learned scholars, the most skilled poets, and the most holy monks. They test the young maiden, hoping to find a crack in her facade. They ask her about the most obscure passages of the Buddhist sutras. She recites them from memory, explaining their hidden meanings with the clarity of a goddess. They ask her about the complex star charts of the Chinese astronomers. She points to the ceiling and describes the movement of the planets as if she were standing among them. They ask her about the ancient history of the Qin dynasty. She speaks of the emperors as if she had shared tea with them just yesterday. The emperor was enchanted. He fell into a love that was more like a sickness. But as his devotion grew, his strength began to fade. The once vibrant sovereign became pale and bedridden. His breath grew shallow, and his eyes lost their light. The finest physicians in the land could find no cause for his decline. It was as if his very life force was being siphoned away, drop, by the presence of the woman he loved. Suspicion began to coil through the palace like smoke. The court astrologer and exorcist, Abe no Yasunari, a descendant of the great Abe no Seimei, was called to investigate. Yasunari was a man who saw not the skin, but the spirit. He observed Tamamo-no-Mae from the shadows. He noticed that even in the darkest corners of the palace, she seemed to emit a faint, ethereal glow. He smelled the scent of ozone and ancient earth that followed her, a scent that did not belong in a world of incense and perfume. Yasunari devised a plan. He convinced the court to hold a grand hare, a purification ceremony. He invited Tamamo-no-Mae to participate, knowing that a spirit of her nature could not endure the presence of the ultimate holy truth. As the monks chanted and the sacred mirrors were unveiled, the Jewel Maiden began to tremble. Her elegant posture collapsed. Her voice, once like a flute, turned into a guttural growl. In a blinding flash of golden light that shattered the palace windows, her human form tore apart. Standing in the center of the hall was no longer a beautiful girl, but a massive fox with fur the color of burnished gold. And behind it, fanning out like a terrifying sun, were 9 long, bushy tails. The court screamed in terror as the beast leaped from the palace and vanished into the night, flying toward the desolate plains of Nasu. The emperor, though heartbroken, ordered his two greatest generals, Miura no Suke and Kazusa no Suke, to lead an army of 80,000 men to hunt the creature down. This was no longer a simple hunt. It was a war between humanity and the cosmic wild. For months, the army pursued the fox across the jagged landscapes of the Tochigi province. The Kyubi no Kitsune was a formidable foe. It used its 9 tails to summon storms, to create illusions of entire armies, and to breathe fire that turned the grass to ash. One night, the fox appeared in a dream to Miura no Suke. It took the form of the woman he had known at court. Her eyes filled with tears. She begged him for mercy, telling him that her nature was not evil, but simply older than the laws of men. But the general was a man of duty. He steeled his heart. The next day, he and Kazusa no Suke found the fox on the Nasu Plains. They used a dog-chasing tactic they had practiced for weeks. With 2 arrows, one through the heart and one through the neck, the great 9-tailed fox was finally brought down. But a creature of this power does not simply die. As its lifeblood soaked into the earth, its spirit refused to leave the physical world. It transformed its body into a massive dark stone, which came to be known as the Seisho Seki, or the Killing Stone. For centuries, this stone sat in the desolate landscape, surrounded by a permanent mist of poisonous gas. Any bird that flew over it would fall dead from the sky. Any animal that brushed against it would wither and perish. It was a monument of pure, distilled resentment, a reminder of the price of the fox's ambition. It was not until the 14th century that a holy priest named Geno arrived at the stone. He did not come with arrows or swords. He came with compassion and the power of the Buddhist law. He performed an exorcism, striking the stone with his staff and chanting the sutras of liberation. The stone shattered into pieces, and the spirit of the fox was finally allowed to move on, its cycle of vengeance broken. Yet, the legend of the 9-tailed fox is not confined to Japan. The scholars of the Heian period were well aware that this creature had a history that stretched back to China and India. In the Chinese Shan Hai Jing, or the classic of mountains and seas, the 9-tailed fox is described as a beast of omen, sometimes a sign of a great ruler, and sometimes a harbinger of a dynasty's fall. It was believed that the fox who became Tamamo-no-Mae was the same spirit who, centuries earlier, had taken the form of Daji, the concubine of King Zhou of the Shang dynasty. Daji was said to be so beautiful that she caused the king to neglect his duties and descend into cruelty. She delighted in the suffering of others, inventing terrible tortures and draining the empire's wealth for her own pleasure. When the Zhou dynasty finally fell, the fox fled across the mountains, eventually finding its way to the shores of Japan. This narrative suggests that the Kyubi no Kitsune is a trans-historical force, a recurring test for civilization. It is the temptation of beauty and wisdom used for the sake of power alone. But let us move away from the blood-soaked plains of Nasu and the cruel courts of the Shang. Let us look at the 9 tails through a different lens, the lens of cosmic balance. In many esoteric traditions, the 9 tails represent the 9 levels of heaven, or the 9 stages of enlightenment. A fox that achieves 9 tails is a being that has successfully navigated the complexities of existence. It has been a predator and a prey. It has been a lover and an enemy. It has been a beast and a scholar. The gold or white fur of the nine-tailed fox is a symbol of Sunya, the void. It reflects the belief that at the highest level of wisdom, there is no difference between the self and the universe. The Tenko does not need to trick or hide, for it has nothing left to prove. It is a guardian of the cosmic order. It is said that when a Tenko walks the earth, the weather becomes mild, the crops flourish, and the hearts of men are filled with a strange, inexplicable peace. They are the silent architects of prosperity. Imagine the dignity of such a creature. It does not speak in human words, for it communicates through the vibration of its spirit. Its tails move in a rhythmic dance that mirrors the rotation of the galaxies. To look into the eyes of a nine-tailed fox is to see the birth and death of stars. It is a terrifying intimacy. It is the realization that our lives, which feel so long and significant, are merely a single heartbeat in the life of the fox. The modern legacy of the nine-tailed fox continues to haunt our imagination. In March of the year 2022, news outlets around the world reported a strange event. The Seisho Seki, the killing stone in Nasu, had naturally split in two. For the people of Japan, this was not just a geological occurrence. It was a mythological echo. Some whispered that the spirit of the fox had finally been released from its prison, or perhaps that the world was entering a new age of chaos where the old guardians were no longer enough. The breaking of the stone was a reminder that the myths are not dead. They are merely sleeping in the rock. As we sit here in the quiet of our own thoughts, let us reflect on the burden of the nine tails. To live for 1,000 years is to lose everything you have ever loved, over and over again. To possess the wisdom of the ages is to see the flaws in every human heart. The nine-tailed fox is a lonely figure. It sits on the peak of the mountain, watching the lights of the villages below, knowing that it can never truly belong to that world again. It is a god that was once an animal, a queen who was once a trickster. The Kyubi no Kitsune is the embodiment of the paradox of power. It is both the jewel maiden and the killing stone. It is the wisdom that saves and the beauty that destroys. It is the golden thread that connects the ancient dynasties of China to the modern streets of Tokyo. It is the proof that the spirit is not bound by time or space. In the next part of our journey, we will descend from the heights of the imperial palace and return to the shadows of the forest. We will explore the dark arts of the Kitsune, the illusions that baffle the mind, the magic of the foxfire, and the terrifying reality of the Kitsunetsuki possession. We will see how the common people sought to protect themselves from the whims of the wild foxes and the rituals that were used to bargain with the tricksters of the field. The golden light of the nine tails is fading now, giving way to the flickering cold blue of the foxfire. The grand saga of Tamamo-no-Mae is over, but the smaller, more personal stories of the Yako are just beginning. The plains of Nasu are quiet. The mist is settling over the broken pieces of the killing stone, and the wind is carrying a new scent, the scent of mischief and illusion. Listen to the sound of the wind. It carries a low, yelping laugh. The tricksters are coming out to play. The nine-tailed queen may be gone, but her children are everywhere. They are in the shadows of the old temples, in the mist of the mountain passes, and in the corners of your own mind. The journey through the fox myth is far from over. The ancient Japanese believed that to even speak of the nine-tailed fox was to invite its attention. But they also believed that by understanding the myth, they could learn to navigate the complexities of their own lives. The kyubi is a mirror. It shows us our greed, our pride, and our desire for perfection. But it also shows us our capacity for wisdom and our connection to the infinite. As the night grows deeper, the stories become more intimate. We move from the history of nations to the history of souls. The fox is shifting its shape once more, turning from a queen back into a wanderer. Let us follow it into the shadows. The foxfire is the only light we have, and we must trust it to show us the way. The tails are fanning out again, but this time they are not gold. They are the color of smoke and starlight. The transformation is continuing. The cycle is turning. The nine-tailed one is watching us from the edge of the world, and her eyes are full of 1,000 years of stories. Let us listen to the next one. The history of the nine tails is a history of the human heart's fascination with the unattainable. We want the wisdom of the fox, but we fear the price. We want the beauty of the jewel maiden, but we fear the killing stone. This tension is what makes the Kitsune the most enduring figure in all of Japanese mythology. They are the embodiments of our own contradictions. In the coming part, we will see how these contradictions manifest in the daily lives of the Japanese people. We will see the fox not as a queen, but as a neighbor who might bring you wealth or might bring you madness. The magic is getting closer. The illusions are getting thicker. Keep your eyes open and do not trust the first thing you see. The fox is waiting for you in the dark. The golden brilliance of the nine tails has retracted into the velvet shadows of the cedar groves, leaving us in a world where the only light is the cold, flickering blue of the foxfire. We have witnessed the rise and fall of celestial queens and the cosmic weight of 1,000 years. But now, we must turn our attention to the more intimate, often terrifying magic of the common fox spirit. This is the magic of the Yako, the wild foxes who dwell in the gaps between our perception and reality. It is a magic born of hunger, whim, and a deep, ancient sense of justice. In this part of our journey, we will explore the kitsunebi, the art of the kitsunetsuki, and the devastating consequences of earning the enmity of a spirit that never forgets. To understand fox magic, one must first understand kitsunebi, or foxfire. Imagine you are a traveler in the Edo period, walking alone along a narrow mountain pass as the sun dips below the horizon. The silence of the woods is absolute, broken only by the rhythmic crunch of your sandals on the dry earth. Suddenly, in the distance, you see a light. It is not the warm, steady glow of a paper lantern from a village inn. It is a pale, ethereal flame that dances just above the surface of the marsh. It flickers with a ghostly blue or a sickly green hue, moving with a fluid, intelligent grace. This is the breath of the fox. The folklore suggests that the kitsunebi is created when a fox exhales or strikes its tail against the ground. Some believe the fox carries a glowing bone or a star pearl in its mouth to produce the flame. These lights are often seen in clusters, moving in long, organized lines through the forest. To the uninitiated, they look like a wedding procession or a group of samurai patrolling the border. But if you try to follow them, the lights will lead you deeper into the thickets, away from the path, until you are hopelessly lost in the darkness. The kitsunebi is the first layer of the fox's defense, a way to confuse and disorient those who intrude upon their territory. But the kitsune's mastery of illusion goes far beyond mere lights. They are the ultimate architects of the mind. A fox can create an entire world out of nothing but a handful of dried leaves and a focused will. There are countless stories of Kitsune no Yado, or fox inns. A weary traveler, exhausted from a long day's march, encounters a grand, welcoming mansion in the middle of a desolate moor. The doors are thrown open by polite servants. The baths are steaming with hot water, and the tables are laden with the most exquisite seafood and sake. The traveler spends a night in luxury, feeling like a prince. Yet, when the morning sun touches the traveler's face, the illusion shatters. He wakes up not in a silk-lined bed, but in a cold, muddy ditch. The fine sake he drank was actually horse urine, and the exquisite seafood was nothing but a pile of rotting leaves and dirt. His silk robes are revealed to be a tattered old straw mat, and the gold coins he thought he had earned are merely yellowed leaves from a ginkgo tree. The kitsune does not just trick the senses. It mocks the human desire for comfort and status. It exposes the fragility of our reality, showing us that what we value most can be turned to dust in a single night. This brings us to the most complex and socially significant form of fox magic, kitsunetsuki, or fox possession. Unlike the romantic transformations we explored earlier, possession is a violent intrusion of the spirit into the human body. It was a phenomenon taken so seriously in historical Japan that it occupied the space between medical diagnosis and spiritual emergency. A person possessed by a fox would undergo a terrifying transformation. Their face would narrow, their eyes would become sharp and restless, and they would develop an insatiable craving for abura age, or red beans. The possessed individual would often speak in yelps or high-pitched voices, sometimes revealing secrets they could not possibly know. They might act with a strength and speed that defied their physical build, climbing trees like an animal, or running through the forest for days without tiring. In the social context of the Edo period, kitsunetsuki was often blamed on kitsune-mochi, or fox-holding families. These were families believed to have a hereditary bond with fox spirits, using them as invisible servants to bring wealth to the household, or to strike down enemies. To be accused of being a fox-holder was a social death sentence, often leading to ostracization or even the burning of the family's home. The cure for fox possession was as dramatic as the affliction itself. Exorcisms were performed by yamabushi, the mountain ascetic priests of the Shugendo tradition, or by monks of the Nichiren sect. These rituals involved the use of fire, sacred mirrors, and the recitation of powerful Buddhist sutras. The goal was to force the fox to reveal its name and its reason for the possession. Sometimes the priest would place a piece of fried tofu near the victim, tempting the fox to leave the body to feed. In other, more brutal cases, the victim might be forced to inhale the smoke of burning pine needles or chili peppers, making the body so uncomfortable that the spirit had no choice but to flee. The reasons for possession were often rooted in the kitsune's sense of justice. A fox might possess a man because he stepped on a hidden fox den, or because he killed a fox for its fur, or even because he failed to leave an offering at a roadside shrine. The fox does not view the world through the lens of human morality. It views it through the lens of reciprocity. If you take from the wild will take from you. If you disrespect the unseen will humiliate you. This is the core of the fox's revenge. There is a famous story from the Konjaku Monogatari about a man who was a skilled hunter and a boaster. He claimed that no fox could ever trick him, for his eyes were too sharp and his mind too cold. One day he saw a beautiful woman standing by a river, and he immediately suspected she was a fox. He drew his bow and threatened to kill her unless she revealed her true form. The woman wept and begged for her life, but the hunter was relentless. He took her back to his village, intending to prove his prowess to the neighbors. But as he entered the village, the woman vanished into a puff of smoke. The hunter looked down and realized he was not holding a captive. He was holding a dead branch. The villagers laughed at him, mocking his arrogance. Enraged, the hunter returned to the forest, but every time he tried to hunt, he would see the same woman in the distance, always just out of reach, her laughter echoing through the trees. He eventually lost his mind, wandering the woods until he became as wild as the animals he once hunted. The fox did not kill him. It simply took away his dignity, which, for a samurai, was a fate worse than death. The kitsune's revenge is often generational. There are stories of families who were haunted by a fox for 7 generations because an ancestor had harmed a pregnant vixen. This long memory is why the fox is treated with such caution in Japanese folklore. They are not like the obake or the yokai that can be banished with a simple charm. They are kami-adjacent beings. They have a place in the cosmic order, and to disrupt that order is to invite a storm that may not break for 100 years. Yet, we must also speak of the Ninko, the invisible foxes who act as guardians of a household. In certain regions, particularly in the Sanin and Hokuriku districts, the belief in these spirits was so strong that people would build small, hidden shrines inside their homes to appease them. These foxes were believed to bring fuku, or good fortune, but they were also incredibly sensitive. If a guest was rude, or if the house was not kept clean, the fox would depart, taking the family's luck with it. The relationship was a constant negotiation, a daily practice of mindfulness and respect. The illusions of the kitsune also serve as a form of social commentary. In the Setsuwa tales, foxes frequently target corrupt officials, greedy merchants, and hypocritical monks. There's a story of a high-ranking priest who was known for his love of luxury and his disregard for the poor. A fox transformed into a messenger from the heavens, telling the priest that he had been chosen to ascend to the Pure Land while still alive. The priest, blinded by his own ego, followed the messenger to a high cliff. He was told to jump into the clouds to reach paradise. The priest jumped, only to fall into a pile of manure at the bottom of the ravine. The fox's trick was a mirror, reflecting the priest's own spiritual emptiness. We see a recurring theme here: the kitsune as the equalizer. In the rigid hierarchy of feudal Japan, where a peasant could not look a samurai in the eye, the fox was the only force that could humiliate the powerful. They were the champions of the marginalized, the ones who could turn the world upside down. This is why the common people, despite their fear, often held a secret affection for the fox. The fox was the outsider who knew all the secrets of the insiders. The geography of fox magic is also worth noting. In Shikoku, the 4th largest island of Japan, there is a curious lack of fox stories. Instead, the island is the kingdom of the tanuki, the raccoon dog. Legend says that long ago, a great war was fought between the foxes and the tanuki for control of the island. The tanuki, with their own formidable shape-shifting powers, eventually drove the foxes across the sea to Honshu. This regional divide shows how the Japanese mind localized these spirits, creating a map of magic that varied from province to province. As we linger in this world of illusions, we must address the Kitsune no Yomeiri once more, but from a more atmospheric perspective. Imagine a hot summer afternoon. The sun is blazing in the sky, yet a sudden, gentle rain begins to fall. The drops are like liquid silver, and the air smells of ozone and wet stone. This is the sun shower, and it is the only time the foxes will allow their weddings to be glimpsed by human eyes. It is a moment of total contradiction: light and rain, joy and shadow. To see the fox wedding is to see the peak of their illusion, a moment where they no longer care if we know it is a dream. The Kitsune no Yomeiri is a reminder that even the most powerful shapeshifters have a need for community and ritual. They are not solitary monsters. They are a society with their own laws and traditions. When they marry, they do so with the same gravity and elegance as the high nobility of the Heian court. They are the shadows of our own culture, mimicking our most sacred acts to show us that they, too, are part of the story of the land. But the revenge of the fox is never far from the wedding. If a human interrupts the procession, or if they try to steal a glimpse of the bride's face, the consequences are severe. The offender might find themselves struck blind, or they might lose their voice, or they might simply find that every time it rains, they are overwhelmed by a crushing, inexplicable sadness. The fox allows us to watch, but it does not allow us to participate. We are the audience, not the guests. The magic of the fox is a magic of Ma, the gap. It is the space between the raindrop and the sunlight. It is the moment between waking and dreaming. By inhabiting this space, the Kitsune remains untouchable. You cannot catch an illusion, and you cannot argue with a shadow. They are the masters of the fleeing world, the ukiyo. As we prepare to move into the next part of our journey, we will look at the intersection of these wild foxes and the structured world of religion once more. We will explore the Dakinetan and the Buddhist synthesis that transformed the fox from a trickster into a symbol of esoteric wisdom. We will see how the Onmyoji wizards, like the legendary Abe-no-Sime, learned to harness this volatile energy for the protection of the state. The cold blue fire of the Kitsunebi is starting to fade as the first hint of a new dawn touches the horizon. The illusions are dissolving, the grand mansions are turning back into mossy rocks, and the laughter of the tricksters is becoming a whisper in the wind. The forest is returning to its physical form, but it is a form that has been forever changed by the presence of the fox. You can never look at a cedar tree or a mountain stream the same way again, for you know that it might be a disguise. The fox is still there, hidden in the Ma. It is watching you, waiting to see if you have learned the lesson of the killing stone and the fox wedding. It is waiting to see if you will walk the path with respect, or if you will be the next boaster to wake up in a muddy ditch. The journey through the fox myth is a journey of humility. It is the realization that we are not the masters of this world. We are merely the guests of the spirits. Listen to the rustle of the leaves as you walk toward the morning light. Is it a common fox hunting for its breakfast? Or is it a 1,000-year-old spirit preparing its next masterpiece of illusion? The answer is not for us to know. The kitsune keeps its secrets well, tucked away behind its 9 tails and its golden eyes. All we can do is bow to the shadows and keep our tofu ready. The magic is moving, and the story is continuing. The ancient texts say that a fox who has performed many tricks and lived a long life will eventually seek a higher path. They grow weary of the games and the revenge. They begin to look toward the heavens, seeking to turn their yako nature into something more refined. This is the transition to the Tenko, the celestial fox we spoke of before. But the path to the stars is paved with the memories of the field. Every trick, every possession, and every revenge is a step toward that final transformation. The fox does not forget its past. It integrates it. As the sun rises, the Kitsune-gao faces disappear, and the white foxes of Inari return to their stone seats. The wild ones retreat into the deep caves and the hollow trees. The world of men is waking up, a world of commerce, law, and solid things. But the foxfire is not gone. It is merely waiting for the next sunset. The storm has passed, and the silence of the morning is here. But in that silence, if you listen very closely, you can still hear the soft padding of paws on the grass. The kitsune is never truly gone. The morning light of the new day does not merely illuminate the physical world. It brings a clarity to the spiritual structures that have governed Japan for centuries. As we leave the flickering, chaotic blue of the foxfire and the mud-caked ditches of the tricksters, we find ourselves standing before the grand, weathered gates of a Buddhist temple. The air here is different from the wild, cedar-scented forests of the Yako. It is an air filled with the heavy, sweet scent of sandalwood incense and the low, vibrating hum of monks chanting the Heart Sutra. In this space, the kitsune underwent its most profound transformation, from a volatile spirit of the fields into a sophisticated symbol of esoteric wisdom and cosmic law. This is the story of the Honji Suijaku, the blending of the ancient Shinto kami with the soaring philosophies of the Buddha, and the rise of the deity Dakinetan. To understand how the fox entered the heart of Japanese Buddhism, we must look at the Shingon and Tendai sects that flourished during the Heian period. The monks of these schools did not see the indigenous spirits of Japan as enemies to be conquered, but as local manifestations of universal truths. The fox, already established as the messenger of Inari, was identified with a powerful figure from the Indian tradition, the Dakini. In its original Sanskrit context, the Dakini were fierce, sky-dancing spirits associated with the cremation grounds and the raw, transformative power of the goddess Kali. They were consumers of human flesh and carriers of secret knowledge. When this concept reached the shores of Japan through the teachings of masters like Kukai, it encountered the fox myth and began to change. The result of this synthesis was Dakinetan. Imagine a goddess of breathtaking beauty, dressed in white robes that flow like water, riding through the clouds upon the back of a majestic white fox. This fox is no mere animal. It is a celestial vessel, its fur shimmering with the light of 1,000 suns. In her hands, Dakinetan carries a jeweled sword to cut through ignorance, and a wish-granting jewel to provide for the needs of the faithful. This version of the kitsune was no longer a creature to be feared for its tricks. It was a being to be invoked for the attainment of worldly success, political power, and spiritual liberation. The fox had moved from the rice field to the imperial altar. This esoteric fox cult was particularly favored by the ruling elite and the military class. They saw in Dakinetan a power that was both immediate and absolute. During the medieval wars of Japan, commanders would pray to the Inari Dakini for victory on the battlefield, believing that the fox messenger could fly over the enemy lines to deliver secret intelligence or to cause confusion in the hearts of the opposing generals. The fox became a strategist, its natural intelligence elevated to the level of divine providence. This connection between the fox and the warrior class added a new layer of dignity and danger to the Kitsune myth. It was a spirit that could build an army as easily as it could build a palace of leaves. As we move through the temple corridors, we must speak of the figure who bridges the world of the fox and the world of the human state more than any other. Abe-no-Seimei. We touched upon his birth in the previous chapters, the son of the white fox Kuzunoha and the nobleman Yasuna. But Seimei was more than just a child of two worlds. He was the master of the Onmyodo, the way of yin and yang. As the official astrologer to the imperial court in the 10th century, he was responsible for reading the movements of the stars, predicting the future, and protecting the city of Kyoto from the Oni demons that lurked in the shadows of the gates. It was said that Seimei's fox blood gave him a second sight. He did not look at the world the way other men did. He could see the spirits that sat on the shoulders of the ministers, and he could hear the conversations of the crows. One of the most famous legends of Seimei involves his use of shikigami, or paper spirits. These were small, folded figures that he would breathe life into, turning them into invisible servants who would do his bidding. Folklore whispers that these shikigami were actually the spirits of his mother's kin, Kitsune, who had agreed to serve him out of love and respect for his heritage. Imagine Seimei in his garden at night, the white sand reflecting the moonlight. He does not need to shout to be heard by the spirits. He merely whispers a name, and a fox appears from the shadows of a stone lantern, its tails fanning out in a silent salute. Seimei used these messengers to uncover plots against the emperor and to heal those who had been struck down by the curses of rival wizards. He was the diplomat of the spirit world, the one who ensured that the contract between humanity and the kami was maintained. His life was a testament to the idea that the wild power of the Kitsune, when guided by wisdom and discipline, could be the greatest shield of civilization. The cult of Seimei and the fox mother Kuzunoha became so popular that it birthed a whole genre of kabuki and bunraku theater. For centuries, audiences in the bustling cities of Osaka and Edo would weep at the scene where the fox mother writes her parting poem on the silk screen. This transition from myth to pop culture is crucial. It shows that the Kitsune had become a mirror for the Japanese people's own emotions, their longing for lost family, their respect for hidden power, and their fascination with the boundary between the seen and the unseen. As the medieval period gave way to the Edo period, the Kitsune myth underwent another urbanization. The city of Edo was a place of rapid growth and social tension. In this environment, the Kitsune mochi, or fox-holding families we discussed earlier, became a source of intense social anxiety. People lived in close quarters, and the success of a neighbor was often viewed with suspicion. If a merchant's shop thrived while others failed, the whisper would go around, "He has a fox in his attic." This was not a metaphorical statement. People truly believed that certain families had a hereditary pipe fox, or kudagitsune, a tiny spirit that lived inside a bamboo tube and would travel out at night to steal wealth from others and bring it to its master. This era saw the rise of the Inari-ko, or Inari worship associations. These were groups of common people who would pool their money to travel to the great shrines of Fushimi or Toyokawa. They would bring back amulets and small fox statues to place on their neighborhood altars. The fox was no longer a distant messenger. It was a communal protector. The O-Inari-san was the god of the Nagaya, the long tenement houses where the craftsmen lived. The fox was the one who watched over the communal well and ensured that the local tofu maker's fire stayed under control. We must also speak of the Kitsune-ken, a popular hand game of the Edo period that eventually evolved into what we know today as rock, paper, scissors. In the fox game, the three positions were the fox, the hunter, and the village headman. The fox beats the headman by trickery. The headman beats the hunter by authority, and the hunter beats the fox with his gun. This game, played in the tea houses and the geisha districts, shows how the kitsune had been integrated into the very rhythm of social play. It was a figure that everyone knew, a symbol of the shifting power dynamics of daily life. The visual representation of the fox also reached a peak during this time through the art of ukiyo-e, the woodblock prints. Great artists like Utagawa Kuniyoshi and Tsukioka Yoshitoshi created stunning images of foxes under the moonlight, foxes taking human form, and the legendary Tamamo-no-Mae. These prints were the films of their day, spreading the imagery of the kitsune into every household. The fox was portrayed with a mixture of elegance and haunting beauty. Long, flowing kimonos that hid a hint of a tail, and eyes that glowed with a predatory intelligence. But as Japan moved into the Meiji Restoration in the late 19th century, the world began to change once again. The government sought to modernize the nation, to embrace Western science, and to centralize Shinto as a state religion. This led to a period of Shinbutsu Bunri, the forced separation of Shinto and Buddhism. The thousands of years of synthesis, the beautiful blending of the fox and the dakini, was suddenly under threat. Many Inari shrines were stripped of their Buddhist elements. The white foxes were told they were only Shinto messengers, no longer the sky-dancing attendants of the goddess. Yet, the spirit of the kitsune proved to be more resilient than the laws of men. The people did not stop praying to Daikanitan, and they did not stop seeing the fox as a creature of complex, dual nature. The Inari-san simply went underground or moved into the private hearts of the people. The modernization of Japan brought railways and steamships, but it did not get rid of the kitsunebi in the rural provinces. Travelers still reported seeing the fox weddings from the windows of their trains, a sign that the old magic was adapting to the new world. In the 20th century, the kitsune moved from the woodblock print to the screen. The rise of manga and anime saw a resurgence of interest in Japanese folklore. The fox became a central archetype in this new media, but it was often returned to its more primal, mythologically accurate roots. We see the influence of the Kojiki and the Konjaku Monogatari in the stories of modern fox heroes and villains. The 9 tails returned as a symbol of ultimate, often uncontrollable power. The Kitsunetsuki was reimagined as a psychological or spiritual challenge for a new generation of characters. As we stand here in the twilight of the 6th part of our journey, we can see the full arc of the kitsune's history. From the first bark in the primeval mist, to the red gates of the rice god, to the silk robes of the imperial court, and finally to the digital screens of the modern day. The fox has never left us. It has merely changed its skin to suit the era. It is a creature of survival. It is the gold that does not tarnish, and the shadow that does not fade. But the journey is not quite over. We have seen the fox in history, in religion, and in art. In the final part of our saga, we will bring our focus back to the present and the future. We will reflect on what the Kitsune means to us today, in a world that is louder and brighter than the forests of old. We will follow the fox as it reaches its final 1,000th year, turning into the celestial Tenko and disappearing into the light. We will say our farewells to the trickster and the guardian, and we will listen for the last yelp of the fox as the moon sets one final time. The temple bells are beginning to ring for the evening prayer. The stone foxes are being draped in shadows, and the incense smoke is curling upward toward the stars. The world of Abe no Saime and Dakinitan is quiet, but the pulse of the fox spirit is still beating in the heart of Japan. Whether it is a tiny altar in a skyscraper or a massive shrine on a mountain, the Kitsune remains our link to the mystery of life. The ancient texts say that the Tenko no longer has a need for human skin, for it has become the skin of the universe itself. But for those of us who still walk the earth, the red fur and the clever eyes are a comfort. They are a reminder that we are never truly alone in the dark. There is always a messenger, always a witness, and always a story. The Kitsune is the guardian of that truth. The lanterns of Fushimi are flickering now. The long road home is lit by the memory of 1,000 years. Let us walk the final miles together. The dawn is coming, and with it, the final tale will sprout. The story of the Kitsune is the story of Japan, and the story of Japan is the story of the human heart. Let us see how it ends. Or rather, let us see how it begins again. The temple bells have fallen silent, their deep, resonant vibrations lingering in the cool night air like the memory of a dream. We have walked through the fire and the mist, through the golden halls of emperors and the humble rice paddies of the peasantry. We have seen the fox as a bride, a queen, a trickster, and a god. But as the first pale light of the final dawn begins to touch the horizon of modern Japan, we must ask ourselves, what remains of the Kitsune in a world of glass, steel, and neon? To find the answer, we must look not just at the ancient scrolls, but at the way the spirit has woven itself into the very soul of the contemporary landscape. The fox is not a ghost of the past. It is a living presence that continues to bridge the gap between our high-speed reality and the timeless rhythm of the earth. Imagine standing on a crowded street corner in Tokyo, perhaps in the bustling heart of Shinjuku or Ginza. Above you, massive screens flash with advertisements, and the sound of the city is a constant electric roar. Yet, if you turn your head at just the right angle, you might notice a narrow gap between two skyscrapers, a space no wider than a person's shoulders. If you follow that gap, stepping away from the neon glare, you find yourself in a pocket of absolute stillness. There, nestled among the air conditioning units and the industrial pipes, is a tiny Inari shrine. A splash of vermilion paint, a pair of small stone foxes with weathered red bibs, and perhaps a fresh offering of a small cup of sake or a piece of fried tofu. This is the modern Kitsune. It does not demand that we tear down our cities. It simply asks that we leave a space for the mystery. These urban shrines, often maintained by the local shopkeepers or salarymen, are the anchors of the Japanese spirit. They are a reminder that even in the most technologically advanced society on Earth, there is a deep-seated need for the Ma, that sacred interval we have spoken of before. The fox remains the guardian of that interval. It is the silent observer of the modern age, watching the frantic pace of human progress with the patient, ancient eyes of a being that has seen dynasties fall and forests return. In the rural heartlands, the connection between the kitsune and the environment remains even more visceral. As we face a world where the wild spaces are shrinking, the fox has become a symbol of ecological resilience and the sanctity of nature. In the mountains of Tohoku and the forests of Hokkaido, the people still speak of the foxes as the protectors of the springs and the sentinels of the cedar groves. When a landslide is avoided or a sudden rain saves a parched crop, the locals do not just thank the science of meteorology. They leave a bow for the fox on the hill. The kitsune is the face we give to the intelligence of the earth itself, a reminder that the land is not a commodity to be exploited, but a living partner in our survival. As we move toward the final transformation of our story, we must reflect on the concept of En, the karmic connection that binds the kitsune to the human heart. For 1,500 years, the fox has been our mirror. It has reflected our greed in its tricks, our loyalty in its marriages, and our ambition in its 9 tails. But most importantly, it has reflected our capacity for wonder. To believe in the kitsune is to believe that there is more to the world than what we can measure with our instruments. It is to accept that a leaf might be a coin, that a stranger might be a spirit, and that the wind might be a messenger. Now, let us turn our gaze to the highest peak of the sacred mountains, where the air is so thin it feels like ice, and the stars are so close you could reach out and touch them. Here, we witness the final stage of the fox's journey. We find a 9-tailed kitsune who has reached the end of its first millennium of life. Its golden fur has turned to a white so pure it seems to emit its own light, a brilliance that leaves no shadow. This is the Tenko, the celestial fox. The Tenko no longer needs to shift its shape to walk among men, for it has transcended the need for physical form. It has achieved a state of ku, or emptiness, not a void of nothingness, but a void of infinite potential. In this state, the fox is one with the elements. It is the breath of the wind, the heat of the sun, and the depth of the ocean. It no longer plays tricks, for there is no ego left to amuse. It no longer seeks revenge, for there is no self left to offend. The Tenko is a being of pure compassion and cosmic order. Legend says that when a fox becomes a Tenko, it ascends to the heavens to serve the high gods directly. It becomes a star in the constellation of the Great Bear, or a flicker of light in the tail of a comet. But even from the high heavens, it does not forget the earth. It remains the ultimate guardian, its 9 tails fanning out across the sky to weave the protection that keeps the chaos of the void at bay. When you look up at the night sky and see a shooting star, the elders say it is not a rock falling through the atmosphere, but a Tenko moving through the realms, checking on the shrines and the fields it once protected. The journey of the kitsune is a cycle that never truly ends. For every Tenko that ascends to the stars, a new fox cub is born in the shadow of a mountain shrine. It opens its eyes for the first time, its ears twitching at the sound of a distant temple bell. It will spend its first century learning the ways of the woods, its second century learning the hearts of men, and its centuries thereafter growing in wisdom and power. The stories we have told tonight are not just echoes of the past. They are the blueprints for the future. As long as there is a forest, as long as there is a harvest, and as long as there is a human heart that yearns for mystery, the Kitsune will be there. The dawn is breaking now. The deep blues and violets of the night are being replaced by the soft pinks and oranges of a Japanese morning. The mist is lifting from the rice fields, and the stone foxes at the shrine gates are starting to glow with the first rays of the sun. Our long journey together is coming to its conclusion. We have followed the fox from the dawn of the world to the edge of the heavens, and now we must return to our own lives. But as you go, carry the spirit of the fox with you. Remember the lessons of the shapeshifter, that reality is fluid, that beauty is often a mask, and that kindness to the stranger in the woods can lead to a blessing that lasts for generations. Do not be afraid of the the gaps in your own story. Fill them with wonder, with stories, and with the quiet respect for the unseen. If you ever find yourself walking through a park or a forest, and you see a flash of red in the undergrowth, do not immediately think of the biological classification of the animal. Instead, pause for a moment. Feel the weight of the 1,500 years of history that move with those paws. Listen for the whisper of the Kitsune in the rustle of the leaves, and perhaps, if you have a bit of tofu or a kind word, leave it in the shadows. The fox is watching, and it never forgets a gesture of respect. The sun is fully up now. The city is waking, and the silence of our narrative is being replaced by the sounds of the waking world. But the Kitsune remains. It is in the red gates of Fushimi, in the paper charms on the city altars, and in the stories we tell our children to keep the magic alive. The guardian is at the gate, the messenger is on the path, and the 9 tails are fanning out to embrace the new day. Thank you for journeying with me through the realms of the fox. If you found peace in these stories, and if the spirit of the Kitsune has touched your heart, please leave a like and subscribe to Hearths of Myths. Your support helps us keep these ancient fires burning and ensures that the stories of the old gods and the forest spirits are never forgotten. May your paths be clear of illusions, may your harvest be abundant, and may the wisdom of the fox guide you through the shifting shadows of your own journey. As the light fills the room, take a deep breath. Feel the ground beneath you, solid and real, but also feel the possibility of the dream. The Kitsune has taught us that we are all shapeshifters in our own way, constantly evolving, growing, and reaching for the stars. The first 1,000 years are the hardest, but the view from the peak of the mountain is worth every step. Sleep well, or go forth into your day with the clever eyes and the steady heart of the seeker. The fox is gone back into the trees, but the story belongs to you now. Let it grow, tale by tale, until it reaches the heavens. The last yelp of the fox echoes in the distance, a sound of joy and freedom. The mountain is still. The shrine is waiting. The cycle is complete. Farewell, until the moon rises again, and we find ourselves once more at the edge of the forest, waiting for the flicker of the foxfire to show us the way home. The ancient silence is here, and it is beautiful. May the blessings of Inari and the wisdom of the Tenko stay with you, always. This concludes our deep dive into the complete life of the Kitsune. We have covered the origins in the Kojiki, the divine mandate of Inari, the romantic tragedies of the folklore, the cosmic power of the Nine Tails, the dark arts of possession, and the modern spiritual resonance. We have seen how the fox is the ultimate survivor of the Japanese soul. As the final incense smoke curls upward, we leave the shrine and step back into the world, forever changed by the presence of the fox. The shadows are retreating. The world is bright. The fox has vanished into the light of the morning. But look closely at the dew on the grass. There is a single, small paw print leading toward the heart of the forest. The story never truly ends. It only begins again in the heart of the next listener. Good night, and may your dreams be guarded by the white foxes of the mountain.